So I bought this wood about 8 years ago. I got it from my exotic hardwood dealer. He had bought it from a gentleman who lived on the West Coast who had collected unusual pieces of wood his whole life. And I offered him a good price on this, and he accepted, and he still complains to this day that I got it for way too cheap. But I love the piece of wood, but I couldn't decide what I wanted to do with it. And so I sat on this for years. And finally I decided I'm going to make a coffee table out of this piece of wood. But I don't want to do the trend that's common these days, which would be to put a frame around this, pour in 200 gallons of epoxy and make an epoxy table. I didn't want to do that. I've seen some beautiful epoxy tables, but that's not what I wanted for this piece of wood. But once I decided I wanted a coffee table out of it, I couldn't decide what I wanted to do for the base of it. And so for a long time I mulled over what to do with the base. And then last fall I was at a fan expo, and there was another artist in there who made beautiful enamel pieces, earrings, medallions, etc. And I commissioned him to make me some enamel and copper medallion inlays. And it all gelled in my mind for the base. I'm going to use these copper medallion enamel inlays along with powdered metal copper inlay, which we're going to do a tutorial on, and then copper legs going down to join the two pieces. And we're going to make this coffee table, and we're going to show you exactly how we did all the steps and what the final outcome is. I did a quick template to try to figure out what size I might like the base to be. I selected some pieces of walnut to glue up a blank. My sander or planer weren't big enough to flatten it, so I turned to the CNC. I could have really used a metal bandsaw here. With the legs cut, I figured out the positioning for them and drilled the holes. Alright, so I've temporarily set up the tabletop onto the first part of the base. There'll be legs, of course, that go underneath that yet. And it's just sitting there loose. And I have to make some design choices at this point. So I've set it up here so I can visualize things a little bit better. And I want to decide what shape I want to do the base in and how to lay it out. So I looked at a few different options. Everything's pretty organic looking so far. So my first option was, of course, just to square this off, maybe round over the corners, and have a square base to it. But because of the organic nature of the top, I don't think that's what I want to do. So the second option I'm thinking about is kind of mirroring the pattern of the top and doing a very organic shape for the bottom. And I considered that for quite a while, but the only problem I have is that organic shape on the bottom I think is going to detract from the organic shape on the top, and just I don't think it's going to blend quite right. So I have also pushed that option aside. So the third option I'm thinking about is just doing a round base. And because the legs are asymmetrical, I think that's maybe going to be my best option to lay it out and be able to do some of the other stuff I want to do. So I have these medallions that I had made for me out of a copper base with an enamel inlay. So I'm thinking of placing them 4 around the edge between the legs and a couple of inches from each side as a highlight. And then I'm still debating. So here's a few more things I could do. I could do a circle in the middle and put a piece of glass in there just to, that's going to show down through to the ground with the legs on. And I kind of like that idea. I may still do that. I'm still debating on that. But then I want to do some other copper inlay. So I'm thinking about doing something kind of organic. And then maybe with some leaves coming out of them. So I'm going to play around with it a little bit. See if I can come up with some ideas for what I want to do for the highlights, and I'll show you what I come up with. Alright, so here's what I'm thinking. The top with the copper legs, the copper medallions going around, do a design with vines and leaves going around that I'm going to fill in. I'm going to carve out those, and then I'm going to do a powdered metal copper inlay. And then I'm thinking the center, I'm going to carve that out and put a piece of glass in the center there. So let me know what you think of this design choice. Would you do something different? If so, let me know in the comments. I used a Dremel with a plunge base and a 1/8 inch bit to carve out the leaves and vine shape. With the carving done, it was time to do the copper powdered metal inlay. It's a 2-part resin, mixed 50-50, and then a copper metal powder gets added to that to give you your mixture. The product I used was Total Cast by a company called Chem Resins. I'll put a link in the description down below. They also make the metal powder. And this is the copper powder, but they do have other types of powder available also for different looks. Just mix it 50-50, add your powdered metal, pour it in. You want to leave it a little bit proud, so when it a little bit seeps down into the wood, you still have that excess. Set it aside to dry for a couple of days. While that was drying, I did a final sanding on the top to get it ready to go into the spray booth. I then applied multiple coats of a high gloss lacquer to give it a beautiful look. That really brought the colors out. Now using a 2-part epoxy glue, I'm going to glue the copper legs into the top. I lost the footage of sanding the base smooth, but I just used a random orbit sander to sand off the excess copper and make everything level again. Using the CNC, I cut out the center hole for the glass and did a shallow mark around the outside of the piece so I could see exactly what size it was going to be for final positioning. Alright, now that I got the center hole in with the glass and I marked where the outside's going to be so I could do a final position check on exactly where the rest of the holes need to go. So I'm going to mark them off, do a little measurements, make sure these are like the same distance from the edge, mark everything off, and then I can go in and do the final holes on that stuff, and we'll be then good to put the feet on. I was having a debate on this center glass, and I'm going to see how it looks on the rug If I don't like it, I can always put something else in there. I could maybe do even a copper plate in there that has engraving on it, or a piece of cherry wood or something with an engraving. I'll see what it looks like, but it just sits in there, so it can always be changed out if I decide I don't like it. The base is ready for finishing. I taped off the holes for the medallion so the glue wouldn't have any issue sticking to the medallion and the wood. I think that copper inlay looks fantastic. I decided to make a couple of plates to mount into the center on the bottom to see if I liked them better than the glass panel. I'll get your opinion at the end if you like them more than the glass. Let me know what you think. My wife thinks I should maybe add a piece of glass to the top for functionality. I kind of like it like this. What do you think? If you got some value out of this video, please hit like. We have lots of other cool projects in the works. If you want to be notified when they come up, hit subscribe.